botches that the McGarveys had made of their lives. Stealthily he went into the bathroom, locked the door as well as he could, and began to pour the contents of Gramps' bottle down the drain. He was going to refill it with full-strength anti-gerasone from the 22 smaller bottles on the shelf. The bottle contained a half-gallon, and its neck was small, so it seemed to Lou that the emptying would take forever, and the almost imperceptible smell of anti-gerasone, like Worcestershire sauce, now seemed to Lou, in his nervousness, to be pouring out into the rest of the apartment through the keyhole and under the door. The bottle gurgled monotonously. Suddenly up came the sound of music from the living room, and there were murmurs and the scraping of chair legs on the floor. "Thus ends," said the television announcer, "the 29,121st chapter in the life of your neighbors and mine, the McGarveys." Footsteps were coming down the hall. There was a knock on the bathroom door. "Just a sec," Lou cheerily called out. Desperately he shook the big bottle, trying to speed up the flow. His palm slipped on the wet glass and the heavy bottle smashed on the tile floor. The door was pushed open, and Gramps, dumbfounded, stared at the incriminating mess. Lou felt a hideous prickling sensation on his scalp and the back of his neck. He grinned engagingly through the nausea, and, for want of anything remotely resembling a thought, waited for Gramps to speak. "Well, boy," said Gramps at last, "looks like you've got a little tidying up to do." And that was all he said. He turned around, elbowed his way through the crowd, and locked himself in his bedroom. The Fords contemplated Lou in incredulous silence a moment longer, and then hurried back to the living room, as though some of his horrible guilt would taint them too if they looked too long. Morty stayed behind long enough to give Lou a quizzical, annoyed glance. Then he also went into the living room, leaving only Emerald standing in the doorway. Tears streamed over her cheeks. "Oh, you poor lamb. Please don't look so awful. It was my fault. I put you up to this with my nagging about Gramps." "Nah," said Lou, finding his voice. "Really, you didn't. Honest, Em. I was just—" "You don't have to explain anything to me, hon. I'm on your side, no matter what." She kissed him on one cheek and whispered in his ear, "It wouldn't have been murder, hon. It wouldn't have killed him. It wasn't such a terrible thing to do. It just would have fixed him up so he'd be able to go any time God decided he wanted him." "What's going to happen next, Em?" said Lou hollowly. "What's he going to do?" Lou and Emerald stayed fearfully awake almost all night, waiting to see what Gramps was going to do. But not a sound came from the sacred bedroom. 2 hours before dawn, they finally dropped off to sleep. At 6 o'clock, they arose again, for it was time for their generation to eat breakfast in the kitchenette. No one spoke to them. They had 20 minutes in which to eat, but their reflexes were so dulled by the bad night that they had hardly swallowed 2 mouthfuls of egg-type processed seaweed before it was time to surrender their places to their son's generation. Then, as was the custom for whoever had been most recently disinherited, they began preparing Gramps' breakfast, which would presently be served to him in bed on a tray. They tried to be cheerful about it. The toughest part of the job was having to handle the honest-to-God eggs and bacon and oleomargarine on which Gramps spent so much of the income from his fortune. "Well," said Emerald, "I'm not going to get all panicky until I'm sure there's something to be panicky about." "Maybe he doesn't know what it was I busted," Lou said hopefully. "Probably thinks it was your watch crystal," offered Eddie, their son, who was toying apathetically with his buckwheat-type processed sawdust cakes. "Don't get sarcastic with your father," said Em, "and don't talk with your mouth full, either." "I'd like to see anybody take a mouthful of this stuff and not say something," complained Eddie, who was 73. He glanced at the clock. "It's time to take Gramps' breakfast, you know." "Yeah, it is, isn't it?" said Lou weakly. He shrugged. "Let's have the tray, Em." "We'll both go." Walking slowly, smiling bravely, they found a large semicircle of long-faced Fords standing around the bedroom door. Em knocked. "Gramps," she called brightly, "breakfast is ready." There was no reply, and she knocked again, harder. The door swung open before her fist. In the middle of the room, the soft, deep, wide, canopied bed, the symbol of the sweet by and by to every Ford, was empty. A sense of death as unfamiliar to the Fords as Zoroastrianism or the causes of the Sepoy Mutiny stilled every voice, slowed every heart. Awed, the heirs began to search gingerly under the furniture and behind the drapes for all that was mortal of Gramps, father of the clan. But Gramps had left not his earthly husk but a note, which Lou finally found on the dresser, under a paperweight which was a treasured souvenir from the World's Fair of 2000. Unsteadily, Lou read it aloud. Somebody who I have sheltered and protected and taught the best I know how all these years, last night turned on me like a mad dog and diluted my anti-gerasone, or tried to. I am no longer a young man. I can no longer bear the crushing burden of life as I once could. So, after last night's bitter experience, I say goodbye. The cares of this world will soon drop away like a cloak of thorns, and I shall know peace. By the time you find this, I will be gone. Gosh, said Willie brokenly. He didn't even get to see how the 5,000-mile speedway race was going to come out. Or the Solar Series, Eddie said, with large, mournful eyes. Or whether Mrs. McGarvey got her eyesight back, added Morty. There's more, said Lou, and he began reading aloud again. I, Harold D. Ford, etc., do hereby make, publish, and declare this to be my last will and testament, revoking any and all former wills and codicils by me at any time heretofore made. No, cried Willie, not another one. I do stipulate, read Lou, that all of my property, of whatsoever kind and nature, not be divided, but do devise and bequeath it to be held in common by my issue, without regard for generation, equally share and share alike. Issue? Said Emerald. Lou included the multitude in a sweep of his hand. It means we all own the whole damn shootin' match. Each eye turned instantly to the bed. Share and share alike? Asked Morty. Actually, said Willie, who was the oldest one present, it's just like the old system where the oldest people head up things with their headquarters in here and... I like that, exclaimed Em. Lou owns as much of it as you do, and I say it ought to be for the oldest one who's still working. You can snooze around here all day waiting for your pension check while poor Lou stumbles in here after work all tuckered out and... How about letting somebody who's never had any privacy get a little crack at it? Eddie demanded hotly. Hell, you old people had plenty of privacy back when you were kids. I was born and raised in the middle of that goddamn barracks in the hall. How about... Yeah? Challenged Morty. Sure, you've all had it pretty tough, and my heart bleeds for you. But try honeymooning in the hall for a real kick. Silence! Shouted Willie imperiously. The next person who opens his mouth spends the next 6 months by the bathroom. Now clear out of my room. I want to think. A vase shattered against the wall, inches above his head. In the next moment, a free-for-all was underway, with each couple battling to eject every other couple from the room. Fighting coalitions formed and dissolved with the lightning changes of the tactical situation. Em and Lou were thrown into the hall, where they organized others in the same situation and stormed back into the room. After 2 hours of struggle, with nothing like a decision in sight, the cops broke in, followed by television cameramen from mobile units. For the next half hour, patrol wagons and ambulances hauled away Fords, and then the apartment was still and spacious. An hour later, films of the last stages of the riot were being televised to 500 million delighted viewers on the eastern seaboard. In the stillness of the 3-room Ford apartment on the 76th floor of Building 257, the television set had been left on. Once more the air was filled with the cries and grunts and crashes of the fray, coming harmlessly now from the loudspeaker. The battle also appeared on the screen of the television set in the police station, where the Fords and their captors watched with professional interest. Em and Lou, in adjacent 4x8 cells, were stretched out peacefully on their cots. Em, called Lou through the partition, you got a wash basin all your own, too? Sure. Wash basin, bed, light, the works. And we thought Gramps' room was something. How long has this been going on? She held out her hand. For the first time in 40 years, hon, I haven't got the shakes. Look at me. Cross your fingers, said Lou.